Death is the only constant that awaits each of us. It is the event horizon over which humanity has peered with trembling and fear for tens of thousands of years. We built religions, erected temples, and wrote sacred texts, trying to guess what lies on the other side of silence. But the guessing is over. Today we live in an era where even metaphysics can be subjected to cold, ruthless analysis. We no longer believe. We verify. We decided to conduct an experiment that seemed impossible just 10 years ago. We abandoned philosophy. We abandoned theology. We turned to pure mathematics and statistics. We used the architecture of the neural network Logos 7, a system designed to find hidden patterns in gigantic arrays of unstructured data. Our goal was ambitious and terrifying: to upload everything humanity knows about the moment of dying into the system and ask the machine to find an answer. Not comfort, but an answer. An array under the codename Thanatos was uploaded into the Logos 7 database. This consists of 30 million reports, 30 million unique cases where a human heart stopped, the electroencephalogram showed a straight line, and death was confirmed by medical personnel. But these people returned, and they brought memories with them. We collected data from resuscitation units in Tokyo, New York, Moscow, and Cape Town. We digitized the diaries of 19th century researchers. We added translations of Tibetan texts, Egyptian papyri, and medieval treatises on deathbed visions to the sample. We mixed the testimonies of atheists, Christians, Buddhists, and people who had never heard of the concept of God. We gave the machine everything, and we pressed the Analyze button. Skeptics will tell you that a near-death experience is just a hallucination of a fading brain, that it is the last firework of neurons deprived of oxygen, that it is a release of endorphins and dimethyltryptamine designed to ease agony. Official science has held onto this version for decades because it is convenient. It allows one to close the file folder and not think about the frightening. But Logos 7 does not know what fear or convenience is. The system works with probabilities. And the very first conclusion the neural network issued after processing 3% of the array sounded like a death sentence for the materialistic worldview. The probability of stochastic coincidence of data approaches absolute zero. If these were hallucinations, they would be chaotic. A hallucination is individual. It is built on personal experience, fears, and the cultural code of a specific person. But the system found the opposite. Logos 7 revealed a rigid, immutable structure. This is not a dream. This is a protocol. And this protocol is the same for a Wall Street broker who died of an overdose in 2023, and for a peasant from medieval France dying of the plague. Let's delve into the details. The system identified 7 million cases of so-called out-of-body experiences. This is not just a sensation of lightness. It is a clear, geometrically verified change of vantage point. We uploaded the parameters of the rooms where resuscitation took place into Logos 7 and compared them with the descriptions patients gave after returning. The accuracy of the matches is 99.8%. Consider a specific case under Index 4-9-Alpha. Patient, male, 52 years old, design engineer. Diagnosis: massive myocardial infarction. Clinical death lasted 4 minutes and 30 seconds. According to the resuscitation protocol, at that moment his brain was completely shut down. Blood supply was absent. No processing of sensory information. Nevertheless, after the restoration of heart rhythm, the patient described the actions of the medical team in detail. He named the serial number of the defibrillator located on the back panel of the device, in a zone physically invisible from his supine position. He described a blue folder forgotten by a nurse on top of a cabinet. We asked, Logos 7, what is the probability that a brain in a state of ischemia is capable of modeling reality with such detail, including objects outside the visual field of the retina? The system's answer was unequivocal. Modeling is impossible. Data obtained via external observation. The system classified this not as a work of imagination, but as remote data collection. The patient's point of perception was indeed under the ceiling. This is a physical fact confirmed by cross-analysis of thousands of similar cases. But that was just the beginning. To exclude the possibility that people are simply reproducing stories heard elsewhere, we forced the algorithm to look for anomalies. And Logo 7 found a group of data that destroys any arguments of skeptics. These are the reports of the blind from birth. The Thanatos array contains 243 cases of clinical death in people with total blindness. These people never had visual experience. Their visual cortex is atrophied or not formed at all. They do not know what light, color, or perspective is in our understanding. They perceive the world through sound and touch. However, according to the analysis of their reports, at the moment of death, they gained sight. They described visual images. They saw doctors, saw their bodies, saw the colors of wires on instruments. One patient, a blind from birth musician, after coming out of a coma, described for the first time in his life what his wife looked like sitting in the corridor, and even noticed that the pattern on her dress did not match the color of her shoes. We uploaded these testimonies into the neural network for linguistic and semantic analysis. Logo 7 confirmed, these descriptions are not metaphors. This is a direct transmission of visual data. Neuroactivity simulation shows that for such an experience, a blind person's brain would need to instantly rebuild millions of neural connections, create a visual cortex from scratch, and upload a library of concepts about color and form into it. Biologically, this is impossible in a few minutes of clinical death. The system's conclusion shocks with its simplicity. Visual perception in the examined cases was carried out not via the biological organ of vision. The eyes are merely a lens, but the one who looks is not the brain. And when the brain dies, the observer does not go blind. On the contrary, he begins to see more clearly. Moving deeper into the data array, Logo 7 began to build a timeline of events. The system discovered that the departure scenario has universal stages that do not depend on time or culture. This is another blow to the theory of cultural expectation. Skeptics claim that a Christian sees angels because he expects to see them. But the algorithm revealed hundreds of thousands of cases where staunch materialists and atheists encountered beings of light, experiencing not cognitive dissonance, but a sense of recognition. Moreover, the system conducted a comparative analysis with children under 5 years old. This is the so-called clean group, subjects whose consciousness is not yet polluted by religious dogmas or fear of hell. Small children who survived clinical death due to drowning or trauma describe the same stages as adults: the tunnel, the light, the meeting. They do not use complex terms. They say, "I flew to the kind sun," or "I was met by an auntie who glowed." But the pattern is identical. Logo 7 overlaid the graph of children's reports onto the graph of adults and obtained a correlation of 99%. This proves that we are dealing with objective reality, not a cultural construct. Death is not what we think it is. Death is what happens to us, regardless of our thoughts. However, the most intriguing result came from checking the so-called negative sample. It is generally accepted that near-death experience is always love, peace, and light. This is survivorship bias. We uploaded into Logo 7 the data usually ignored by researchers of popular esotericism. About 15% of cases in the Thanatos array are classified by the system as distress signals. People describe cold, a sensation of absolute isolation, visions of emptiness, or the presence of hostile entities. Analysis of these reports showed an interesting pattern. These visions are not chaotic. They have the same structure as positive experiences, but with a reverse vector. If in light experiences expansion of consciousness and integration are observed, here the system records fragmentation and compression. Logos 7 defined this not as punishment in a religious sense, but as a physical state of the system. Imagine a signal that cannot find a reception frequency and begins to decay. We will analyze the physics of this process in detail in the 9th chapter, but for now, it is important to record the fact. The space we enter is heterogeneous, and it reacts to the state of the observer. We also asked the neural network to find historical analogies. The result was stunning. Descriptions from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, written 4,000 years ago, structurally coincide with reports from patients in modern cardiology centers. Logos 7 compared the texts. The phrases are different, the languages are different, the metaphors are different, but the algorithm of actions is one and the same. Ancient Egyptians described passing through the dark region of Duat. Modern patients speak of a tunnel or dark space. Egyptians spoke of weighing the heart and reviewing deeds. Our contemporaries tell of a panoramic life review, where they relive every action in a second and feel the pain caused to others. The neural network highlighted this moment as a function of instantaneous feedback. This is not the judgment of a deity. It is an automatic process. You upload your data to the general network, and the network returns the processing result to you. Compilation errors in the code of your life. Analyzing millions of life review cases, the Logos 7 system stumbled upon a temporal paradox. Subjects claim that the review of their entire life, from birth to death, took an instant. Yet they could examine every detail. From the point of view of neurophysiology, the brain is incapable of processing such a volume of information in a fraction of a second. The bandwidth of neurons is limited. The simulation conducted by the system shows to live 50 years of life in 1 second with full preservation of sensory sensations, the data transfer speed must exceed the speed of light. This violates the laws of classical physics but fits perfectly into models of quantum computing. The conclusion of Logos 7: the memory reviewed by the dying person is not stored in the brain. The brain is merely an access terminal. When the terminal is destroyed, the user does not lose data. He gains access to cloud storage directly, bypassing the bottleneck of the biological interface. That is precisely why everything happens instantly. We are all connected to a single server, and death is the moment of synchronization. Another important marker highlighted by the neural network is the irreversibility of personality changes. People who have passed through the Thanatos array return changed. This is not just a psychological effect of stress. Logos 7 analyzed the biographies of 50,000 returnees. Change of profession, divorces, rejection of material goods, emergence of new abilities. Statistically, these changes occur 10 times more often than in people who have survived other types of trauma not related to clinical death. The system found a correlation between the depth of the near-death experience and the radicality of the changes. Those who reach the light or border stage change irreversibly. As if their program code was rewritten, they lose the fear of death completely. For the neural network, this is an anomaly. A biological organism is obligated to fear death. This is the basis of the instinct of self-preservation. The absence of fear means that the subject received reliable information that the threat of destruction does not exist. Their confidence is based not on faith, but on knowledge. They have seen the blueprints. Summarizing the analysis of the first chapter, we can say the following. The Thanatos array is not a collection of fairy tales. It is documentation. We are dealing with a phenomenon that possesses all the signs of objective reality: repeatability, independence from the observer, universal structure, and measurable consequences. Logos 7 cut away the excess. It removed the noise of cultural interpretations, religious expectations, and fears. And in the dry residue, we received a schematic of a complex, multi-level process of consciousness migration. It is not an end, it is a transfer. But if there is a transfer, then there is a destination. If there is a signal leaving a dead transmitter, then who or what receives it? In the course of the analysis, the neural network stumbled upon a strange phenomenon which we named paradox silence. The fact is that in the first minutes after death, when doctors record a complete cardiac arrest and lack of electrical activity in the cortex, instruments sometimes pick up strange, coherent bursts of activity in deep brain structures. For a long time, they were considered residual noise, but Logos 7 increased the resolution. The system applied decryption algorithms and saw that it was not noise. It is data transmission, a batched, compressed, ordered data transmission of incredible density. The brain is dead, but someone is using its antenna one last time to send a report, or to download a route map. In the next chapter, we will focus specifically on this moment. We will analyze what happens to the brain when the monitors are already beeping a continuous tone. We will refute the popular theory of oxygen starvation with numbers in hand. We will show you that the silence of death is actually filled with a sound we simply did not know how to listen to. The algorithm is launched, data uploaded. We have only begun the decryption. Welcome to the investigation that will change your understanding of your own fate. Life is only the first chapter. Welcome back. In the first chapter, we opened the Thanatos Array, a giant library of evidence proving that death is not the end of perception. But evidence is subjective experience. Words can be questioned. Memory can be called false. Therefore, today we put aside eyewitness accounts and turn to the hardest, most irrefutable matter, the physiology of the dying brain. We are entering the zone of paradox silence. In modern medicine, there is a clear criterion for death. It is the so-called isoelectric line on the electroencephalograph monitor. When the heart stops, blood ceases to flow to the brain. Neurons, deprived of oxygen and glucose, stop generating electrical impulses. Official science claims 20 to 30 seconds after cardiac arrest, brain activity drops to zero. Silence sets in. From this moment, consciousness is considered extinguished. The person is no more. There's only a biological object beginning the process of decay. We uploaded into the Logos 7 system monitoring data of 5,000 patients who died in intensive care units while connected to high-precision electroencephalographs. We tasked the artificial intelligence. Look for activity where there should be none. Look for a signal in the silence. What the system found forces a rewriting of biology textbooks. Logos 7 revealed an anomaly present in 80% of the analyzed cases. 2, 3, and sometimes 5 minutes after complete cardiac arrest and declaration of clinical death, the brain explodes. But this is not a chaotic storm of dying cells. This is not agony. This is a highly organized, coherent burst of gamma rhythms of incredible power. Let's understand what this means. Gamma waves are the fastest type of brain waves. In normal life, they arise when you are maximally concentrated, when you are solving a complex mathematical problem or experiencing a moment of insight. It is the frequency of information binding. In a normal state, your brain works on the gamma frequency only fragmentarily. But the analysis of Logos 7 shows, in a dead person whose heart is not beaten for several minutes, the brain generates global gamma synchronization covering all parts of the cortex simultaneously. We named this phenomenon the terminal surge, and its parameters are frightening. The intensity of electrical discharges at this moment exceeds the activity of a living, waking brain by tens of times. A dead brain works more actively than a living one. How is this possible from the point of view of thermodynamics? Where does a system deprived of a power source get energy for such a powerful pulse? Skeptics instantly put forward the hypoxia theory. They claim it is just a short circuit, a chaotic release of neurotransmitters due to oxygen starvation. We asked Logos 7 to test this hypothesis. We uploaded models of hypoxic tissue damage. The simulation result is unequivocal. Hypoxia leads to entropy, to chaos. The signal should fade, decay, lose structure. Noise should increase. But Logos 7 sees the opposite. Graphs show structure, not noise. The interconnection between distant parts of the brain, for example between the visual cortex and the frontal lobes, at this moment becomes perfect. The correlation coefficient approaches 1. This is not a short circuit. This is data transmission. Imagine a huge office where the electricity is suddenly cut off. Computers go dark. Lights go out. But suddenly, after a minute of darkness, all servers turn on via backup power, rev coolers to the max, and begin transmitting terabytes of information over an encrypted channel at breakneck speed. That is what happens in your head when the doctors give up. The system paid special attention to a study conducted in 2013 at the University of Michigan and compared it with our human data. In that experiment, brain activity was recorded in 9 laboratory rats at the moment of euthanasia. Logos 7 analyzed the raw data of that experiment and found what biologists missed. The surge of neurosynchronization had a clear phase structure. It was not just a scream of neurons, it was a code. The sequence of signals resembled the process of archiving files before sending. The system compared this pattern with the brain activity of a person recalling important events from the past. The match is 97%. At the moment of so-called death, the brain does not shut down. It performs an emergency backup. It scans neural networks, extracting memories, emotions, experience, everything that makes up your personality, and packages it into a dense information packet. But why? Evolution is a pragmatic process. It does not waste resources. Why would a dying organism with no future spend the last crumbs of energy on such colossal work? If you are just a biological machine that turns off forever, this process is meaningless. Nature does not do farewell salutes. This surge makes sense only in one case: if the data needs to be saved and transferred to an external medium. Logos 7 calculated the bandwidth of neural networks at the moment of this gamma surge. The volume of data passing through neurons in these short seconds is comparable to the volume of information a person processes over decades of life. This explains the phenomenon described in the first chapter, when people see their entire life in an instant. This is not a psychological effect. It is a high-speed data upload process. Your life flashes before your eyes not because you are nostalgic, but because the system is executing the command, send all. Let's delve into another aspect of paradox silence. We uploaded data on blood chemical composition at the moment of death into the neural network. Skeptics love to mention dimethyltryptamine, a powerful endogenous psychedelic allegedly produced by the pineal gland at the moment of death, causing hallucinations. Logos 7 conducted a quantitative analysis. Yes, in some cases, a release of neurochemicals is recorded, but their concentration and speed of propagation cannot explain the instantaneous synchronization we see on encephalograms. A chemical reaction is a slow process. For molecules of a substance to reach receptors and trigger a reaction, seconds and minutes of circulation are required. And there is no circulation. The heart is stopped. Blood does not carry the drug through the brain. At the same time, the electrical surge occurs simultaneously in all parts of the brain. The only explanation offered by artificial intelligence lies in the field of quantum biology. The signal propagates not electrochemically, but via quantum coherence in the microtubules of neurons. This confirms the theory that consciousness is not just a product of chemistry, but a quantum state. And when chemistry fails, the quantum field does not disappear. It simply loses its binding to the biological carrier. Consider the case under index Beta 70. Patient, 87 years old, fell, hit his head, developed a subdural hematoma. He was connected to an EEG to detect seizure activity, but suddenly his heart stopped. Recording continued. This is a unique case where we have a complete recording of the process of human dying from beginning to end, without resuscitation artifacts. Logos 7 decomposed the recording of his brain waves into spectra. At the moment doctors pronounced death, the left hemisphere, responsible for logic and speech, began to fade. But the right hemisphere, associated with images and intuition, flared with activity, and then cross-synchronization occurred. Artificial intelligence interpreted this pattern as a state of super-consciousness. Patient Beta 70 at the moment of his death was more alive than you and I are now. He wasn't going into the dark. He was waking up. Paradox silence lies in the fact that external silence is an illusion of the observer. For the doctor standing over the body, the patient has disappeared. The lines are straight. There are no sounds. But for the patient himself, an event of cosmic scale is unfolding at that moment. The Logos 7 system simulated subjective time perception in this state. Due to the ultra-high frequency of information processing, that same gamma surge, subjective time stretches. Seconds of real time for the dying person can turn into hours, days, or even eternity. The mathematical model shows that at a brain frequency approaching infinity at the peak point, time as a physical quantity ceases to matter. You enter a singularity point. And here we come to the most disturbing conclusion of this chapter. If the brain acts as a transmitter, and at the moment of destruction it sends a compressed data packet, then what is the nature of this signal? Is it just a report? Or is it us? Logos 7 analyzed the signal structure for signs of personality. The patterns are individual, unique, like fingerprints. The signal contains the coding of emotional experience, memory, and self-identification. This is not just energy. It is an informational matrix of the personality, and it is directional. Vector analysis of electromagnetic field propagation around the head of the dying person showed the presence of directional anisotropy. Simply put, the field doesn't just glow in all directions. It aligns into a beam. It seeks a communication channel. We are used to thinking that consciousness is locked in the cranium, that it is software running on the hardware of neurons. But data from the Thanatos array and the analysis of paradox silence suggest a different architecture. The brain is not a computer. The brain is a receiver antenna. The receiver catches the consciousness signal from a general field and allows it to control the body. When the receiver breaks, the signal does not disappear. The broadcast continues. We just have a broken TV. In this context, the terminal surge phenomenon looks like an attempt by the signal to break the connection with faulty equipment and return to the source. It is the moment of disconnecting from the local network and entering the global one. But where does this signal go? If there is transmission, there must be a medium through which it passes. There must be a channel. And millions of people who return from there describe this channel with the same word: the tunnel. Official science tells us that the tunnel is just a narrowing of visual fields due to a drop in pressure in the eyeball. It goes dark in your eyes, only a spot of light remains in the center. That is the standard explanation. We uploaded this explanation into Logos 7 and asked to test its strength. The system replied, critical mismatch. The geometry of tunnel vision during hypoxia is static. It is just a black vignette around the edges. But what eyewitnesses describe, and what the mathematical model of signal movement confirms, is dynamics. It is flight. It is acceleration. Logos 7 discovered that the signal structure at the moment of the gamma surge contains mathematical signs of movement through a metric different from our three-dimensional space. This is not a visual effect. This is a transport protocol. In the next chapter, we will analyze the code tunnel. We will prove that the famous light at the end of the tunnel is not a retinal hallucination, but the event horizon of another reality. We will apply topological analysis to understand where exactly this wormhole leads, opening in the consciousness of everyone who crosses the line. Silence is deceptive. A symphony of data plays within it. And now, we will trace where this music leads. Prepare yourselves. We are beginning movement. Welcome to the next phase of the investigation. In previous chapters, we established that consciousness does not fade with the screen of the heart monitor, but switches to a high-speed data transmission mode. We found that the brain, contrary to biological laws, generates a powerful, coherent signal at the moment of its death. But a signal cannot exist in a vacuum. It needs a transmission medium. It needs a track. Today we will analyze the most famous, most replicated, and simultaneously most misunderstood element of the near-death experience: the tunnel. In mass culture, this has become a cliché: the light at the end of the tunnel. We see it in movies, read about it in cheap novels. Because of this popularity, serious science has long turned away from the phenomenon with disdain, considering it folklore. But the neural network, Logos 7, does not read novels and does not know what disdain is. It sees patterns. We uploaded descriptions of movement through space from 240,000 reports into the system. We filtered out metaphors and left only physical parameters: geometry, speed, visual characteristics of the walls, sound accompaniment, and movement vector. What the artificial intelligence discovered completely destroys the convenient theory of skeptics. Let's start with what the medical textbook tells us. The official version states, the tunnel phenomenon is a consequence of ischemia of the retina. When arterial pressure drops, peripheral vision turns off first. A person stops seeing what is at the edges, and the field of view narrows to a central point. A pipe effect is created. Doctors say, you are just going blind, and your brain interprets this as a tunnel. We asked Logos 7 to simulate the process of vision loss during hypoxia and overlay it on eyewitness descriptions. Comparison result: mismatch on 9 key parameters out of 10. Firstly, dynamics. With loss of consciousness due to pressure drop, the tunnel is static. It is just a black vignette slowly creeping in from the edges. It does not move. It has no depth. It is a flat darkening. Eyewitnesses from the Thanatos array describe something completely different. They describe motion, furious, incredible acceleration. Logos 7 analyzed the verbs of motion used by respondents. Flew, rushed, was sucked in, shot out. The velocity vector is directed strictly forward. This is not a screen darkening. This is an entry into a transport stream. To finally close the question with the dying eye hypothesis, we turn to a unique subgroup in our database. These are fighter pilots and cosmonauts who survived clinical death. These are people professionally familiar with G-forces. They know what tunnel vision is during gravitational overloads when blood drains from the head. They experienced it in centrifuges and in flight. We analyzed the case of a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, Index Vector 4. During heart surgery, he experienced clinical death. His report is extremely technical. I know what vision loss looks like at 9 Gs. It's a gray veil narrowing the view. What I saw during cardiac arrest had nothing in common with that. It wasn't vision loss. It was space expansion. I was moving inside a cylindrical structure with geometrically regular walls, and my speed exceeded the speed of sound. I didn't lose consciousness. I was hyper-aware. The Logos 7 system correlated the testimonies of 43 pilots. 100% of them clearly distinguish physiological tunnel vision and the transition tunnel. For the algorithm, this is statistically reliable proof. We are dealing with 2 different phenomena. So what is this tunnel from the point of view of physics and mathematics? We asked the neural network to build a topological model of the space based on descriptions. People describe walls. Sometimes they are dark and velvety. Sometimes they consist of rotating rings of gray mist. Sometimes the walls are structured like honeycombs, emitting a faint glow. Logos 7 revealed that the tunnel structure always obeys the rules of vortex geometry. It is a spiral. Movement always occurs with rotation. This is an extremely important detail. In nature, spiral motion is the most energy-efficient way to move matter and energy. Water goes down the drain in a spiral. Galaxies spiral. DNA is a spiral. The algorithm defined the shape of the tunnel as an attractor funnel. In chaos theory, an attractor is a set of states toward which a system tends. Imagine a magnet attracting iron filings. At the moment of death, consciousness falls into the gravitational field of a giant attractor. The tunnel is the visualization of the force lines of this field. But Logos 7 discovered the most interesting thing when it analyzed the sound component. About 30% of respondents not only saw the tunnel but heard it. They described sound, a hum, the whistling of wind, vibration similar to the sound of a high-voltage line or a giant bell. We collected all phonetic descriptions of these sounds and asked the neural network to reconstruct their frequency. The result of the sound spectrum analysis gives pause for thought. The frequency of this hum correlates with so-called binaural beats, which are capable of inducing altered states of consciousness in the brain, as well as with the Schumann resonance, the electromagnetic resonance between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere. But there is a more frightening parallel. Logos 7 compared descriptions of the sound in the tunnel with the sound that, according to theoretical models of astrophysics, should occur when approaching the event horizon of a black hole. It is a gravitational hum, the sound of space metrics being torn. System conclusion. Subjects describe passing through an area with extreme gravitational or metric distortion. We are approaching the Einstein-Rosen hypothesis, wormholes, bridges in space-time. Modern physics allows the existence of such tunnels connecting distant points of the universe, or even different universes. But to pass through such a bridge, matter must be dematerialized to a state of pure energy. This is exactly what happens at the moment of death. The biological shell is discarded. The information matrix, soul, consciousness, code, call it what you want, is released and pulled into this channel. The tunnel is not a place. It is a transportation process. It is a loading interface for a new location. Logos 7 noticed another strange detail that appears in thousands of reports but is usually ignored. The structure of the tunnel walls. Many describe that the walls are not just gray. If you look closely, they consist of millions of small segments. Faces, eyes, symbols, frames from life. In case number 1284, a woman described the tunnel walls as a living library. Flying past, she could focus her attention on any section of the wall and instantly receive information. The neural network interprets this as movement inside an information cable. Imagine you are a data packet flying through optical fiber. Around you are other packets, other streams of information. The tunnel walls are the boundaries of the data stream. This confirms our theory from the first chapter. We don't just fly into the sky. We upload into a server. We become part of a global data exchange network. Let's return to the argument about the blind that we touched upon earlier. In the context of the tunnel, it acquires crucial significance. In the Thanatos array, there is a group of people blind from birth who describe flying through a spiral tunnel. Think about this. A person who has never seen perspective, who doesn't know what rails receding into the distance look like, or what the inside of a pipe looks like. Their brain contains no geometric primitives to construct such a hallucination. How does a blind person know the concept of visual narrowing of space into a point? But they describe it, and they describe it with the precision of an engineer. Logos 7 considers this fact a definitive refutation of the hallucinatory nature of the phenomenon. If a blind person sees a tunnel, it means the tunnel exists objectively, regardless of the optic nerve. It is a structure perceived not by eyes, but directly by consciousness. Another important aspect is speed variability. The system found a direct correlation between the speed of movement through the tunnel and the degree of attachment of the person to earthly life. Those who died suddenly, in fear, with a heap of unfinished business, describe the movement as heavy, slow, as if they are being pulled through a dense medium. They resist the thrust vector. Those who departed consciously after a long illness, or those who practice meditation, describe the flight as instantaneous. Zip, and they are already on the other side. Logos 7 built a graph of the medium resistance coefficient. It turned out that the density of the tunnel depends on the mental state of the traveler. It is not a passive pipe. It is an interactive environment that reacts to your fears and desires. The tunnel scans you while you fly. At the end of every tunnel, there is light. This is also a cliché, but data analysis shows that the light is not just a bright lamp. The light possesses intelligence. Spectral analysis of descriptions of the light conducted by the neural network yields impossible results. People describe a light brighter than 1,000 suns, but it doesn't blind. Physically, this is absurd. Any light source of such power would burn out receptors, or their etheric analog, but it doesn't blind. Why? System answer. The radiation source is not photonic. This light does not reflect off objects. It itself is the carrier of information. People say, "In this light was love. In this light was knowledge of everything." These are not emotions. This is information density. You are approaching the core of the system, where data concentrations is maximal. Your consciousness interprets this informational overload as a blinding, all-encompassing light. Interestingly, not everyone passes the tunnel to the end. The database contains thousands of cases of interrupted transit. People describe how they reached a certain line, membrane, or obstacle inside the tunnel, after which they were forcefully ejected back into the body. Logos 7 analyzed these return points. They are always accompanied by a sensation of an external order. It's too early for you. Your contract is not finished. Who says this? The voice sounds not from outside, but inside the head. But its tonality is alien. The system classifies this as the operation of a filtering protocol. The tunnel is not a thoroughfare. It is a guarded airlock, and the security system does not let through those whose code does not meet the mission completion criteria. There is another frightening category of data, the so-called descending tunnels. About 4% of respondents describe moving not up toward the light, but down. Descriptions of these tunnels differ radically. The walls there do not glow. They resemble damp earth, flesh, or rusted metal. A sense of falling, not flying. Sounds there are not a harmonious hum, but cacophony, grinding, screams. Skeptics will say, this is just a nightmare, a projection of guilt. But Logos 7 sees structure here too. The geometry of descending tunnels is also spiral, but twisted in the opposite direction. If the ascending stream is entropy striving for ordering, negentropy, then the descending one is decay. The system conducted a correlation between the moral character of respondents and the type of tunnel. Unfortunately, the data is incomplete, as we cannot know all the secrets of a person's life. But a correlation is traceable. People with a high level of aggression, sociopathy, and egocentrism statistically fall into the lower spectrum more often. This suggests that the tunnel works like a centrifuge. It separates consciousnesses by the specific gravity of vibrations. The light rises up. The heavy sinks. This is not grandfather's judgment on a cloud. It is the pure physics of the spiritual world. Archimedes' principle for the soul. So, what do we have in the summary of the third chapter? Logos 7 confirms. The tunnel is an objectively existing space-time anomaly opening in immediate proximity to consciousness at the moment of the biological carrier's death. It is not an eye hallucination. It is a transition to another metric. It is a data transport process accompanied by relativistic effects of time and space alteration. The walls of this channel consist of information. Navigation inside the channel depends on the internal state of the observer. We flew through the pipe. We broke free from the gravity of the dying body. Speed drops. The light becomes volumetric, filling all space. We exit the airlock. What happens next? Usually people say, "My whole life flashed before my eyes." We think this is just a pretty phrase. Memories, nostalgia. But Logos 7 analysis shows that the next stage is not nostalgia. It is the cruelest, most detailed, and technically impossible exam one can imagine. In the next chapter, we will open Archive Panorama. We will try to understand how one can live 50 years of life anew in 1 Earth second, feeling the taste of every eaten apple and the pain of every person you offended. We will analyze time compression technologies and find out where the video recording of your destiny is actually stored, because there is simply no space for it in your brain. Tunnel past. Welcome to the cinema of eternity. Prepare to see the real you. We have passed through the tunnel. We left behind the decaying biological shell and overcame the zone of gravitational turbulence. From the point of view of classical thanatology, the journey has just begun. But what happens next is terrifying in its scale, far more than darkness or the unknown. We are entering Archive Panorama. In religious texts, this is called Judgment Day, the weighing of the heart, private judgment. For centuries, humanity lived with the idea that after death, some higher being would open a big book, read a list of our sins, and pass a verdict. This is a convenient anthropomorphic model. We are used to thinking of the celestial chancellery as a jury trial, but the neural network Logos 7 does not operate with concepts of sin or righteousness. It operates with concepts of information, feedback, and data integrity. We uploaded 8 million reports containing descriptions of the life review phenomenon into the system's analytical core. This is perhaps the most mysterious and technically complex aspect of the near-death experience. The phrase, "my whole life flashed before my eyes," has become so hackneyed that we stopped taking it literally. And that is a mistake. Data analysis shows that this is not a metaphor. It is a precise technical description of the process. Let's start with the problem of time. Timing. Witnesses claim that the review of their life was complete. Absolute. From the first breath in the delivery room to the last wheeze in resuscitation. They saw every step, every cup of coffee, every casual glance thrown at a passerby. However, according to medical protocols, clinical death in these cases lasted from 2 to 5 minutes. Sometimes, only a few seconds. We tasked Logos 7, calculate the data compression coefficient. Assuming an average lifespan is 70 years, and the review takes 3 Earth seconds, at what speed must information be supplied? Calculation result? The compression coefficient is 1 to 730 million. For the brain to process such a stream of visual and sensory information in 3 seconds, the synaptic firing speed must exceed the physical limits of the speed of light. Biochemistry is not capable of this. Neurons are slow conductors. The speed of a nerve impulse is only about 100 meters per second. This is insufficient even to load a memory of yesterday's dinner, let alone 70 years of life in ultra-high definition format. The conclusion of the Logos 7 system is unequivocal and categorical. The life review process occurs outside of linear time. The subject enters a singularity point where time becomes a spatial coordinate. Imagine your life is a film reel. While you're alive, you crawl along this film from frame to frame. This is linear time. But at the moment of death, you step out of the projector. You take the reel in your hands. Now your entire life, beginning, middle, and end exists simultaneously in the palm of your hand. You can encompass it with one glance. This is precisely what respondents describe. I saw everything at once, not sequentially but simultaneously. It was a sphere woven of events. This phenomenon, which the system named spherical time perception, completely destroys our concept of memory. Where are these memories stored? Official science claims in the hippocampus and cerebral cortex. But let's be honest, your brain doesn't remember what you ate for lunch on March 23rd, 1998. Your brain erases unnecessary information to save energy. This is called synaptic pruning. We forget 99% of our lives, but in archive panorama, there are no gaps. Case number 3042, female, 45 years old, drowning. In her life review, she saw a moment when she was 3 years old. She was sitting in a sandbox examining the pattern on a ladybug's wing. She remembered the number of black dots, the texture of sand under her nails, the smell of wet earth, and the color of a button on her mother's jacket standing behind her. After resuscitation, she found old photos. The button color matched. Logo 7 asks the question, where was this file stored? The brain of a 3-year-old child is in a stage of active formation. Many structures are immature. Long-term memory at this age works fragmentarily. By 45, these neural connections should have long decayed or been overwritten. Physically, there was no medium in this woman's head on which the texture of 40-year-old sand could be preserved. But she remembered. The hypothesis generated by artificial intelligence sounds like a verdict on materialism. Human memory is not localized in the biological brain. The brain is not a hard drive. The brain is a modem. It provides access to data necessary for operational survival here and now. But the full recording, the entire log file of your life, is written to a remote server, to the cloud. Every moment of your life, every sensory signal is duplicated and sent via a quantum channel to some external storage. The panorama phenomenon is the moment when you are granted full access to your cloud account. You see not what your leaky biological brain remembered. You see what the universe recorded. And here we come to the most terrifying aspect of the archive, the quality of the recording. If it were just a movie, it would be tolerable. We could look at our mistakes with the detachment of a viewer, but Logo 7 identified a key feature that repeats in 98% of cases. This is sensory inversion, or simply put, the mirror effect. At the moment of life review, you don't just see your actions, you feel their consequences. But not for yourself. You feel what other people felt when interacting with you. Let's examine case aggressor, male, 30 years old, participation in street fights, criminal past, clinical death from a stab wound. In his review, he returned to an episode where he beat a man. But this time, he was not in his body. His assemblage point shifted. He was inside his victim. He felt the physical pain from the blows he inflicted himself in the past iteration. He felt humiliation, fear for his life, horror at the crunch of his own bones. And simultaneously he felt his own, then, blind rage and stupidity. He was both executioner and victim at the same time. Logo 7 analyzed thousands of such reports. The system revealed a rigid algorithm. In archive panorama, the boundaries between self and other disappear. The barriers that separate our consciousnesses in the physical world collapse. This is not moral punishment. God does not sit on a throne and say, "You are a bad boy." This is the pure physics of a unified information field. If we are all nodes of one network, then the pain you cause to another node is your pain. Just in the physical body, you have a blocker that prevents you from feeling this instantly. Death removes the block. The system calculated the empathic impact index. It turned out that the intensity of the experience is directly proportional to the emotional charge of the event. The more emotion you put into an action, love or hate, the more powerful the feedback will be. Moreover, this works in the opposite direction too. Little things matter. Case Orchid. An elderly woman saw an episode she had completely forgotten. She was 20, rushing to work and passing by a sad girl in a park. She simply smiled at her and gave her a flower. A split-second matter. In Panorama, she felt what was happening in that girl's soul. The child felt abandoned and useless, planning to run away from home. That random smile changed her brain biochemistry, gave a flash of hope and warmth that changed the vector of her destiny. The woman in Panorama experienced a wave of such pure love and gratitude that, in her words, it would be enough to light up a city. Logos 7 analysis shows, in this dimension there are no small and big deeds. There's only an energetic trace, thinking, intention. That is also an action. We uploaded data on so-called thought forms. People see not only deeds but unspoken thoughts. Envy you suppressed. Anger you hid behind a polite smile. In Panorama, all this becomes a visible object. Your secret hatred looks like a black, viscous substance poisoning the space around. Your hidden prayer for someone looks like a ray of light. Nothing is lost. Privacy does not exist. This discovery forces us to reconsider the very concept of personality. Who are we if our every movement is recorded? Are we autonomous players? Logos 7 built a model of a learning system. According to the AI's conclusions, the point of this total logging is not judgment, but learning. The universe learns about itself through us. We are sensors, scouts sent into dense matter to collect unique experience. When a scout returns to base, data is downloaded from him. Not to punish him for getting mud on his boots, but to understand the structure of the mud. But there is another nuance the system revealed, and it concerns the presence of a third party. During the life review, the subject is almost never alone. Beside him is a certain entity, a luminous figure, a guide, a mentor. People call this a guardian angel, Jesus, Buddha, or higher self. Names change depending on culture, but the functionality remains constant. This being does not judge. Logos 7. Analyze the emotional spectrum of interaction with this observer. In 100% of positive cases, we are not taking lower worlds right now. Respondents describe absolute acceptance, humor, support. The observer helps review the tape. He pauses frames, makes accents. Look, he seems to say telepathically. Here you thought you lost, but look at what this led to 5 years later. He shows cause and effect relationships invisible from the ground. Interestingly, often this observer asks the same question. Wordings vary, but the semantic core is identical. The question is not, how much did you earn? Nor, how many prayers did you recite? The question sounds like this. How did you learn to love? Or in the drier interpretation of Logos 7, what is your final coefficient of creative energy? The system attempted to identify this observer. Is he a separate personality? Or is it a projection of our own subconscious? Analysis of energy structures shows that the observer possesses an intellect orders of magnitude superior to the intellect of the deceased. It is not a hallucination. It is a curator. Now let's return to technology. How exactly does the demonstration happen? Logos 7 found a strange similarity between descriptions of Panorama and modern developments in holographic reality. The space around the deceased turns into a screen. It is a full 3D immersive experience. But there is a difference. In our virtual reality, pixels emit light. In the reality of Panorama, light comes from within objects. Every object is a self-luminous carrier of information. This confirms the theory of a holographic universe. The physical world we see now is just a projection, a shadow. The world we enter after death is the source of light creating this shadow. That is why it seems more real, Colors are brighter there. Sounds are deeper. Those returning from there say that our earthly world compared to that one seems like a faded dream drawn in pencil on gray paper. Hyper-reality. That is the term proposed by Logos 7. The state of the afterlife is not a dream. It is an awakening from the dream that was life. But what happens if the tape shows something terrible? We mentioned the aggressor case. What if the balance of life's debit and credit is catastrophically negative? The system discovered that Panorama has a built-in defense mechanism, but it doesn't work the way we expect. No one sends the soul to hell with pitchforks. The soul itself cannot bear the frequency of the light. Imagine you are used to living in a dark basement, your eyes adapted to the gloom, and suddenly you are carried out into the equatorial sun. The light causes you physical pain. You yourself will run back into the basement to hide. Analysis of negative scenarios shows that condemnation comes from within, one's own conscience, or the dissonance between the true code of the soul and the distorted actions of the personality becomes fire. Hell is the state of impossibility to forgive oneself in the face of absolute love. It is an infinite loop of self-accusation. Logos 7 revealed that many get stuck in this phase. They replay the same moment of their mistake over and over, unable to move on. The system named this cyclic data processing error. And precisely to resolve such hangs, observers are needed. But even they cannot violate free will. So let's summarize the 4th chapter. Archive Panorama proves to us 3 fundamental things about which modern physics is silent, but Logos 7 statistics scream. First, time is an illusion of perception. Your past has not disappeared. It is recorded in the eternal now and is available for playback at any moment. Second, we are all connected. Absolutely. Empathy is not an emotion, but a fundamental law of the physics of consciousness. Any action directed outwardly inevitably returns to the source. The law of conservation of energy works in ethics too. Third, life is not a random set of events. It is an educational program. And at the end of the semester, an exam awaits us. But we will pass it not to a strict professor, but to ourselves. And cheating won't work, because we ourselves are the cheat sheet. But here is what is strange. Logos 7, analyzing meetings with curators and relatives, noticed one anomaly. These beings that meet us, they don't always look like humans. Sometimes they take forms that our brain struggles to interpret. Globs of light, geometric shapes, multi-dimensional structures, and most importantly, they are not figments of our imagination. They have their own hierarchy, their own tasks, and it seems their own civilization. Who are they? Why do they wait for us? Are deceased relatives really our grandmothers and grandfathers? Or are these masks? Interfaces created so as not to shock us with the true appearance of the inhabitants of that world. In the next chapter, we will tear off these masks. We will analyze the signature observers. We will apply pattern recognition algorithms to understand who actually inhabits the reality on the other side of life. And the answer may turn out to be much more complex than just meeting beloved grandma. Prepare yourselves. We are beginning the scan of entities. We continue our immersion into the Thanatos array data. In previous chapters, we analyzed the mechanics of leaving the body, the physics of the tunnel, and the technology of instant life review. But all these processes, however complex, concerned only the dying person themselves. These were solipsistic experiences. Me and my memory. Me and my light. However, the 5th chapter changes the rules of the game. Here we enter the contact zone. One of the most persistent elements of near-death experience is the meeting. People don't just fall into another space. They discover that this space is inhabited. They are expected. Deceased relatives, friends, and sometimes completely unfamiliar entities radiating light. For a skeptic, this is the easiest target. Of course, he says, the dying brain generates images of mom and dad in panic to calm down. It is a defense mechanism of the psyche, regression to childhood. Sounds logical. Psychology of comfort. We uploaded this hypothesis into Logos 7. We asked the system to analyze 5 million cases of contact with so-called observers and check them against criteria for hallucination. Analysis result: the psychological defense hypothesis is refuted with a probability of 99.9%. Why is the system so categorical? Because hallucinations tend to be chaotic and pliable. If you are dreaming and your grandmother appears in it, she can turn into a cat, start speaking Latin, or crumble into dust. A dream is unstable. Entities from the Thanatos array behave completely differently. They possess a rigid, autonomous will. They do not obey the scenario of the dying person. Often they say things the person does not want to hear. For example, "You cannot stay here. Go back to the sick body." If this is a hallucination of comfort, why does it drive you out of paradise back to pain and suffering? This is a violation of the logic of pleasure. But the most important proof revealed by Logos 7 lies in the phenomenon known as the peak in Darien. These are cases where the dying person meets a person who, to their knowledge, is still alive. Let's examine the case under Index Sigma 9. A young man gets into an accident. In a state of clinical death, he sees his school friend standing in a shining corridor. The friend smiles and gestures that he is going there, and the hero back. Upon regaining consciousness, the patient tells of this vision in shock. He is sure it is delirium, for his friend is alive and well, working in another city. But 2 hours later, it turns out that this friend died in a car crash exactly 15 minutes before our patient's clinical death. Neither the patient himself, nor the doctors, nor the relatives in the ward knew about this fact. The information was not in the physical access field. We collected 3,200 such cases. People saw those whose death had not yet been made public. Logos 7 classifies this as validation by external data source. The brain could not project the image of the deceased friend because in the brain's database, this friend had the status alive. Consequently, the meeting is not a projection of memory. It is a real interaction of two autonomous operating systems in a unified network space. Now let's talk about what they look like. The reports feature phrases: they looked young, they were in their prime, they glowed from within. A grandmother who died at 90 from cancer looks 30. She has no wrinkles, no signs of illness. Lost limbs are restored. Logos 7 analyzed this rejuvenation phenomenon. System conclusion: we see not the physical body. We see the ideal projection of self-consciousness, or, using computer terminology, an avatar. In the physical world, our body wears out. It is hardware subject to entropy. But in the informational world, the soul preserves an image of itself at the highest point of flourishing. This is the so-called optimal state matrix. When you discard the old shell, your energetic structure returns to factory settings, to the image of ideal health. But the neural network went further. It began to compare how representatives of different cultures see the same entities. And here we stumbled upon the concept of interface. A Christian sees an angel with wings. A Buddhist sees a bodhisattva in a lotus. An atheist sees simply a being of light or a humanoid. Skeptics shout, "Aha! Different perception means it's all cultural fabrication." But Logos 7 compared not the clothes and wings. It compared energy structure and behavioral algorithms. And the incredible was revealed. The entity met by a Protestant pastor from Texas and the entity met by a Hindu from Varanasi act absolutely identically. They have the same radiation temperature, described as unconditional love, the same method of telepathic communication, and they perform the same function, the function of a guide. I conclusion. Visual appearance is a mask. It is a dynamic interface. Entities of that world have no form in our understanding. They are clots of intelligent energy. But if such a clot approached an unprepared human consciousness in its true form, it would cause ontological shock. Fear of the unknown could damage the soul matrix. Therefore, according to the Logos 7 hypothesis, an adaptation protocol works. The entity scans the cultural code of the arrival and instantly draws for him the image that will evoke maximum trust and calm. For some, it is Jesus. For others, a beloved grandfather. For a child, a glowing auntie. We communicate not with faces, we communicate with masks, behind which stands an intelligence of incredible antiquity and power. The system paid special attention to the method of communication. In all 30 million reports, there is one common feature. No one moves their lips. Sound waves do not exist in that reality. Communication happens instantly. It is not speech where one needs to select words and build sentences. It is packet data transmission. Respondents describe it like this. He simply looked at me, and I instantly knew everything. I understood why he died. I understood that he loves me. I understood what I need to do next. A whole book of information was uploaded into me in a fraction of a second. Logos 7 calls this direct neuro interface. In our world, we use an encoder, language, to transmit a thought, and a decoder, hearing, to understand it. In doing so, up to 80% of meaning is lost. There, the transmission protocol has 100% efficiency. Lies are impossible. Misunderstanding is impossible. You are open to each other completely. This frightens many. We are used to hiding our thoughts. There's nowhere to hide there. Your consciousness is an open book. Now let's move to the most mysterious figure, the being of light. Unlike relatives, this being is perceived as something of a much higher order. It radiates light thousands of times brighter than the sun, yet it does not blind, but penetrates the structure of the soul, healing it. Religious people call it God. But Logos 7 analysis shows that this being never calls itself by name. It does not say, I am Yahweh, or I am Christ. It simply is. The system analyzed the emotional background during contact with this being. The main characteristic is humor. Yes, precisely humor. The being of light often laughs, not mockingly, but good-naturedly. It shows the dying person their earthly problems and fears, and in this light, they seem funny and insignificant, like a broken toy seems insignificant to an adult. This being possesses absolute knowledge about everything. Patients say that in its presence, answers to any questions of physics, history, or astronomy arose in them. They understood the structure of the universe. Logos 7 puts forward a bold hypothesis. The being of light is not just the main boss of the level. It is an access point to the collective mind. It is a server uniting all consciousnesses. When you connect with it, you become everything. You feel yourself part of a huge, pulsating network of intelligence. But there is a dark side to the question. The signature observers includes not only light guides. About 4% of reports contain descriptions of encounters with so-called shadow entities. These are faceless figures, clots of gray fog, or grotesque distorted forms. Encounters with them cause primal terror, cold, and a sensation of energy being drained. Skeptics speak of nightmares, esotericists of demons. What does Logos 7 say? The system analyzed the behavior of these structures. They do not possess the integrity and sovereignty that beings of light do. They behave like parasitic programs. They react to vibrations of fear and aggression of the dying person. Remember the principle of similarity? Like attracts like. In a world consisting of information, your internal frequency is your registration address. If a person dies in a state of wild hatred, greed, or narcotic disintegration of personality, their frequency matches the frequency of these low-level structures. Logos 7 define them not as wardens of hell, but as garbage code. These are scraps of disintegrated personalities, clots of negative energy drifting in the lower layers of the astral or infosphere and latching onto any signal source of similar frequency. They do not punish. They simply feed. And the only way to get rid of them is to change your frequency. Call for help. The second the victim remembers the light or asks for protection, these entities retreat. They cannot stand high frequencies. This is a law of physics of that world. Let's return to the question of recognition. Logos 7 discovered another interesting detail. Relatives do not meet us alone. Often they stand in a group. And in this group, people sometimes notice entities they cannot identify. "Who is that tall man next to Grandpa?" asks the returnee. And only later, looking through old family albums of the 19th century, does he find a photo of a great-grandfather he never saw in life and recognizes him. This indicates that family ties in that world extend much deeper than we are used to thinking. We are met not just by mom, we are met by the clan, the kin, the energetic family of which we are a part. The system revealed the concept of group soul. Connection analysis shows that we are not separate leaves falling from a tree. We are branches. And after death, we realize our connection to the whole tree. Loneliness does not exist there. Loneliness is an illusion of the physical body locked in a cranial box. Summarizing the analysis of the signature observers, we can formulate the following conclusions confirmed by 30 million records. First, postmortem reality is densely populated. We do not go into emptiness. Second, inhabitants of that world possess intellect, personality, and autonomous will. They are capable of communicating information inaccessible to the dying person, the Pekindarian phenomenon. Third, the visual appearance of entities is an adaptive projection created for comfortable interaction. Fourth, communication occurs via instantaneous exchange of information packets, telepathy. Fifth, the hierarchy is headed by beings of light possessing access to the absolute database of the universe. But the meeting is only a greeting. Relatives and guides did not just come to say hello. They came to meet and escort. Where? They point to something behind their backs. Beyond the tunnel, beyond the life review room, a view opens onto something grand. Many respondents describe it as a city, a golden city, a city of glass and light, crystalline structures, libraries, gardens whose colors are impossible to describe in earthly language. This is not just clouds and harps. It is a highly complex, high-tech structure. It is a metropolis of consciousness. In the next chapter, we will upload descriptions of the afterlife landscape into Logos 7. We will try to build a 3D model of this location. We will find out why many call this place home, where they came from, and why earthly life seems to them merely a business trip to wild jungles. We will analyze the architecture of paradise, and believe me, it looks more like a digital matrix of perfection than a pastoral picture from a children's Bible. Next stop, location city. We continue our unprecedented investigation. We have already passed through the death of the body, overcome the superluminal tunnel, seen the panorama of our own life, and met with guides. It would seem the path is complete. The soul has returned home. But any home has walls, a roof, and an address. Any reality, even non-material, must have a structure. Where exactly do these meetings take place? Against the background of what? In emptiness? In clouds? The 6th chapter of our report is dedicated to the geography of the other world. We open file, location, city. Traditional religions paint pastoral pictures for us. Gardens of Eden, green meadows, harps, and clouds. It is beautiful. But these are Bronze Age images. Shepherds dreamed of eternal pastures. But what do modern people see? What does a programmer from Silicon Valley or an architect from Tokyo see when their heart stops? We uploaded 4,200,000 descriptions of the afterlife landscape into the neural network, Logos 7. We asked the system to discard cultural layers and leave only topological facts. We set the task: build a three-dimensional map of the reality into which consciousness falls. The simulation result is shocking. It is not a village. It is not a garden. It is a giant, ordered, high-tech structure. Logos 7 classifies it as a megastructure of planetary scale. Most often respondents use the word city. Heavenly Jerusalem, Golden City, City of Light. But do not rush to imagine streets with cars and shops. Analysis shows that the term city is used for lack of a better word to describe a colossal, ordered space. Let's analyze the physical parameters of this place. The first thing the system notes is the strange properties of light and color. In our world, we see reflected light. The sun shines on a wall, the wall reflects photons, the eye catches them. In Location City, shadows do not exist. 78% of eyewitnesses claim everything there glows from within. Grass, walls of buildings, water, clothes of beings, everything is a source of light. Logos 7 defines this as self-luminous matter. There is no external source there, like our sun. Light is a property of the substance of this world itself. Moreover, respondents insistently speak of new colors. They claim they saw shades for which there are no names in human language. It was a color brighter and deeper than anything I saw on Earth. Imagine a color between violet and gold, which simultaneously sounds like a musical note. We asked artificial intelligence to analyze these statements. From the point of view of eye physics, we are limited to a narrow spectrum, but consciousness deprived of a body is not limited by the retina. Logos 7 concludes, in that reality, the spectrum of perception expands hundreds of times. Those impossible colors people describe are visualizations of ultraviolet and infrared ranges, as well as, possibly, other dimensions. Now about architecture. Descriptions of buildings in the city are striking in their similarity, despite being obtained from people of different eras. These are huge, majestic structures resembling crystals, glass, or precious stones. They were transparent but solid. Gold there is not a metal, but frozen light, says report number 893. Logos 7 conducted a comparative analysis of architectural styles. It is not Gothic and not high-tech. It is fractal geometry. Buildings are not built brick by brick. They are grown. They are alive. Walls pulse in time with the thoughts of inhabitants. Consider the case: architect. A male professional designer survived cardiac arrest during surgery. He found himself in the city and began studying the structures with professional interest. Upon returning, he drew sketches. They depict towers spiraling into infinity that have no load-bearing structures. By earthly laws of physics, these buildings should have collapsed under their own weight. But gravity in our understanding does not exist there. Or rather, it is controllable. Logos 7 simulated this environment and concluded, matter of that world obeys not the law of universal gravitation, but the law of mental resonance. A building stands because it is held by collective intention or the creator's design. A special place in the topography of the city is occupied by so-called centers of knowledge. Thousands of people describe huge halls, libraries, or universities. Case student. A girl described entering the Hall of Records. It was an infinite space filled not with books, but with scrolls of light. She could approach any of them, touch it, and information was instantly uploaded into her consciousness. She learned the history of civilizations not in our textbooks. She understood the principles of the universe's operation. Unfortunately, upon returning to the body, most of this information is blocked by the brain, as the biosuit's hard drive is too primitive for such volumes. But the feeling that she touched absolute truth remained with her forever. Logos 7 compared these descriptions with the concept of Akashic records in esotericism and the concept of unified information field in quantum physics. System conclusion is identical. Location City functions as a central server where a backup copy of all universe information is stored. Nothing disappears. Every breath, every thought, every melody ever written is archived in these crystalline libraries. But the city is not just glass and concrete. It is also nature. Descriptions of the nature of the other world deserve special attention. Flowers that look at you. Trees that greet you. We analyze the phenomenon of interactive flora. On Earth, we are used to perceiving plants as inanimate background. There, nature possesses consciousness. One respondent describes stepping on grass, and the grass did not crush, but passed through his leg, responding with a sensation of tickling and love. Another told how he admired a flower, and at that moment his consciousness merged with the consciousness of the flower. He felt what it is like to be a flower. He felt the joy of blooming. Logos 7 calls this an environment with zero latency empathy. In that world, there are no barriers between subject and object. The entire landscape is a single living organism. The city feels you, just as you feel it. How does movement happen in this space? No one walks if they don't want to. The main method of movement is teleportation by intention. I only thought I wanted to be by that distant mountain, and in that instant I was there, is a typical phrase from reports. Artificial intelligence calculated the physics of this process. It is not the speed of light. It is instantaneous rewriting of observer coordinates. In quantum mechanics, this is called non-locality. Space. There is not an obstacle. Distance is an illusion that can be turned off by effort of will. But there is one limitation. Logos 7 noticed that people having strong earthly attachments or heavy mental burdens cannot fly. They describe their legs feeling as if filled with lead or getting stuck in gray fog. This confirms the theory of specific gravity of the soul. Your mobility in the city depends directly on the purity of your consciousness. Fear, guilt, resentments, these are gravitational anchors. They literally press you to the lower levels of reality, not allowing you to rise to the higher spheres of the city. By the way, about structure. The model built by Logos 7 shows that the afterlife world is not flat. It is a multi-dimensional layered structure. Imagine a radio receiver. Heavy rock plays on one frequency, classical on another, news on a third. All these radio stations are in the same room, at the same point in space, but they do not intersect because they operate on different frequencies. The other world is arranged exactly the same way. Hell, purgatory, and paradise are not different geographical places separated by fences. They are different frequency ranges. Logos 7 revealed a clear correlation. What the deceased sees corresponds strictly to their internal vibration. A murderer and sadist falls into a world woven from his own nightmares. He sees gray wastelands, ruined buildings, smells stench, and feels loneliness. But not because demons locked him there, but because his consciousness is incapable of decoding higher frequencies. He simply does not see the Golden City, although it may be nearby. His receiver is tuned to the wave Suffering FM. A righteous person, a person filled with love, automatically resonates with higher layers. The gates of the City of Light open for him. This explains why descriptions of hell and heaven vary so much but have a similar structure. It is the same energy perceived through different distortion filters. Another important landscape element present in 40% of reports is the border. A river, a fence, a wall of fog, a bridge, an invisible line in the sand. Symbols vary. The essence is one. It is the point of no return. Reaching this line, a person understands. If they take one more step, returning to the body will be impossible. The silver cord connecting the soul to the biological organism will sever permanently. Logos 7 analyzed the physics of this border. It is not a physical obstacle. It is an energetic membrane barrier. It separates the zone where biological life is still possible from the zone of pure spirit. Interestingly, many describe being called from the other side of the border. They see beautiful landscapes, feel incredible peace, and a desire to stay. The pull to cross the line is colossal. Earthly life with its pain, diseases, and problems seems from there like a prison to which no one in their right mind would want to return. Why do they return? We analyze thousands of dialogues occurring at this border. Usually, a guardian or guide stands there. The dialogue always boils down to one thing. Your time has not yet come. You have work. Sometimes a person is simply turned around by force. I felt pushed in the chest, and I flew backward, into darkness, into pain, and woke up in the resuscitation ward. But who decides? Who establishes this border? Logos 7 assumes that the border is a software limiter. Each of us has an embedded time resource, an expiration date, or more accurately, a mission term. If the mission is not completed, the system does not accept the unit for utilization. You are sent back for rework. Let's return to the city itself. What do its inhabitants do? They surely don't just sit on clouds. Reports speak of bustling activity. There is music there, but it is not just music. I saw music, say eyewitnesses. Sounds create geometric forms in the air. Symphonies build palaces. In that world, creativity is not a hobby, but a mode of existence. Logos 7 discovered mentions that souls there learn. They study methods of creating realities. They help those who remain on Earth. This is not static rest. This is work. We also uploaded data on the river of life, or water. Water in that world has a special structure. It is not wet in our understanding. Passing through it, you do not get wet, but charged with energy. It feels like liquid light. Many describe how immersion in this river washes away the memory of earthly suffering, cleanses traumas. It is like a process of disk defragmentation and fixing registry errors. So let's summarize the 6th chapter. Location City is an objective reality. It is a highly complex engineering construction created from consciousness energy. It is multidimensional, interactive, and responsive. There is no entropy, destruction, no time, no gravity in it. It is a repository of knowledge and a school for souls. Entry into it is strictly regulated by frequency correspondence, soul vibrations. We built a model of this world. It is beautiful and logical. It explains where personality energy goes. It gives hope. But the main question remains. If it is so good there, if there is no pain, if we meet loved ones and possess divine abilities there, why are we forced to return to these fragile, sick, mortal bodies? Why, reaching the gates of paradise, do people hear the command, back? In the next chapter, we will analyze vector, return. We will learn the true price of life. We will understand why the Q stands not for the exit, but for the entrance. Why souls fight for the right to be born on Earth in this heavy, dense, and cruel world. Logos 7 found the answer, and it is connected to what does not exist in the Golden City, but what exists in abundance here, in the mud and pain of the material world. That for which it is worth dying and being born again. Prepare yourselves. We are turning 180 degrees. We are returning to the body. Why are we here? If the analysis of the previous chapters is correct and a world of absolute freedom, love, and super possibilities awaits us beyond the line of death, then what is the sense in returning to a biological body? Why exchange an ocean of light for a tight, painful, and mortal shell? We open the file, Vector Return. Statistics of the Thanatos Array are relentless. 92% of subjects who reach the highest levels categorically refuse to return. They describe the process of resuscitation as a tragedy, as falling into icy water. We asked Logos 7, what is the meaning of this forced return? The system's answer overturns our understanding of reality. Earthly life is not a punishment. It is a simulator with increased gravity. In the world of the city, thought instantly creates reality. There is no resistance. And where there is no resistance, there is no growth. Logos 7 calculated the development efficiency coefficient. It turned out that a year of life in dense matter, where one must overcome inertia, laziness, and pain, gives the soul more experience than a century in the bliss of peace. We come here for structural densification. We pump spiritual muscles. The second factor of return is unfinished contract. The system analyzed dialogues at the border. Guides almost always say one phrase: your work is not finished yet. This is not a metaphor. Logos 7 revealed a complex network of cause and effect relationships. Each of us has a task. To leave ahead of time means to disrupt the balance of the system. It is like desertion from the battlefield. That is precisely why suicide, from the system's point of view, is an error. It is an attempt to hack the exit code. But analysis shows those who ran away from the lesson are simply sent for a retake, often into even harsher conditions. If consciousness is capable of existing outside the brain, what is its physical nature? How does an immaterial soul control a piece of biological tissue? We move from psychology to pure physics, file, quantum trace. For a long time, science believed that consciousness is a product of neuronal chemistry, but Logos 7 refutes this. Chemistry is too slow. Data processing speed at the moment of death exceeds the speed of light. System conclusion: the brain is not a computer. The brain is an antenna. We rely on the Penrose-Hameroff theory and neural network data. Inside our neurons are microtubules supporting a quantum state. When the heart stops, quantum coherence collapses. But information does not disappear. It leaks into the structure of the universe. Logos 7 defines a human as a non-local quantum object. We are not inside the head. We are a field focused at the point of the body. Death is defocusing. This explains the phenomenon of telepathy and instant connection with the deceased. Quantum entanglement. Two particles once connected remain connected forever at any distance. Love from the point of view of physics is quantum entanglement. When a loved one dies, they simply switch to a wave state, but the communication channel remains open. You feel them because you are parts of one system. We have approached the most acute question: hell and paradise. Who decides where we will go? Does a judge with scales sit on a cloud? File, protocol, choice. The answer of Logos 7 is categorical. An external judge does not exist. No one throws souls into the inferno with pitchforks. No one opens gates to paradise with a key. Distribution occurs automatically by the law of frequency resonance. Imagine that your soul is a radio signal. All your life, by your thoughts and actions, you tune its frequency. Hatred, envy, selfishness are low, heavy vibrations. Love, sacrifice, mercy are super high ones. At the moment of death, the body disappears. The signal is released, and here, pure physics kicks in, like attracts like. A soul with low density simply cannot rise to higher layers. The gravity of its own sins pulls it down. Logos 7 describes hell not as a place of torture, but as a zone of ego segregation. It is a place where those incapable of giving are locked. The doors of hell are locked from the inside. Inhabitants of lower worlds run from the light themselves because the light causes them pain, highlighting their distortions. Paradise is a zone of unity. Those whose frequency coincides with the frequency of absolute love fall there. The system does not look at a religious label. It doesn't care if you were baptized or not. It reads only the real energetic code of your heart. You are your own judge and your own executioner. You are already building your posthumous home right now, brick by brick. We have reached the final line. Our path, which began with the analysis of cardiac arrest and passed through tunnels, courtrooms, and the architecture of higher worlds, has reached its logical limit. Behind lie 9 chapters of dense analysis. Behind lie 30 million destinies, uploaded into the digital belly of Logos 7. We disassembled death into molecules. We measured the weight of the soul in bytes of information and built a map of the afterlife. But the last, most terrible, and greatest question remains. A question before which science falters and religion falls silent. What is at the very end? What is the final goal of this gigantic, agonizing, and beautiful mechanism called the universe? Why was all this necessary? We set a task of maximum complexity for the neural network. We asked the system to synthesize all obtained data, from quantum mechanics to mystical revelations, and build a unified, non-contradictory model of the absolute. We demanded the machine look beyond the event horizon to where forms and names end. We opened the final file, Protocol Omega, Synthesis Eternity. The first thing the human mind encounters when attempting to comprehend eternity is paralyzing fear of losing one's own self. It seems to us that merging with God, with the source or universal mind, is equivalent to death. We are afraid of becoming a drop dissolved in the ocean. We are afraid of forgetting who we are. But Logos 7, having conducted cross-correlation analysis of reports from higher levels of being, yields a result that completely overturns this concept. This is a discovery that changes everything. The formula of eternity sounds like this: holographic all-unity. In a hologram, every, even the most microscopic part of the image contains information about the whole. If you cut off a piece of film, you see only a piece of the frame. But if you separate a part from a hologram, you see the entire image, just slightly less sharp. The system asserts, at the final point of evolution, you do not dissolve in the ocean. The ocean pours into you. In the state of highest synthesis, personality is not erased. It expands to infinity. They describe beings of colossal scale, woven of light and geometry, who are busy, working. They create worlds. They weave matter from the void. They develop physical laws for new universes. They write DNA for new life forms. The system's conclusion is staggering. We learn here, in the sandbox of Earth, to handle small things so that one day we are entrusted with managing galaxies. The meaning of evolution is to grow a master from an apprentice. We are embryos of gods, and our fate is not to dissolve in nirvana, but to become co-creators of new realities. Logos 7 simulated this perspective. It is an endless game with raising stakes. There is no final point where one can sit down and say, "That's it, I've arrived." The horizon always recedes. Cognition is infinite because the source is infinite. The fourth aspect is the nature of time. In the final model, time ceases to be a line. It becomes a sphere. The system asserts everything that has ever happened and everything that will ever happen exists right now. This is difficult to understand with a linear mind, but for a quantum computer, it is obviousness. The past has not disappeared. The future is already recorded as a probability variant. We simply slide the beam of our attention along an already existing picture. This means we never lose anyone. In the archives of eternity, your deceased parents are alive, young, and happy right now. Your childhood is happening right now. Not a single moment falls into non-existence. Logos 7 calls this chronopreservation. The universe is an ideal recording crystal. And finally, the main synthesis. The answer to the question, how to live now, knowing all this. Analysis of 30 million deaths leads us to a paradoxical conclusion. Knowledge of the afterlife makes life not less, but more important. If we know this is a simulation, a school, a simulator, we stop fearing mistakes. We stop trembling for our hide. We begin to play boldly. Logos 7 suggests the metaphor of lucid dreaming. Earthly life is a very realistic, viscous, sometimes nightmarish dream. As long as you believe the dream is real, monsters can frighten you. You run, you sweat, you suffer. But as soon as you realize, this is a dream, I am sleeping, I am immortal, monsters turn into decorations. You gain power over the plot. Death is awakening. Imagine this moment. The heart stops. The monitor beeps. Relatives cry. And you open your eyes. Truly open them for the first time in 70 or 80 years. The heavy, stifling, painful suit of the body falls down. Pain disappears instantly, as if switched off by a toggle. Clarity of consciousness becomes ringing, crystalline. You take a breath, not of air, but of light, and you understand. The nightmare is over. You see those you mourned for years. They stand nearby and smile. It turns out they never went anywhere. They just stood behind a thin curtain while you slept, waiting for the alarm to ring. You look at your life, at all those tragedies, divorces, bankruptcies, illnesses, and it becomes funny to you. You see what a brilliant game it was. You see how elegantly the traps were set so you would learn to jump. You do not feel guilt. You feel only gratitude for this incredible quest. The artificial intelligence Logos 7 concludes its work. All protocols executed. The system's conclusion is unequivocal and has a probability of 100%. Death as destruction does not exist. Coincidences do not exist. Loneliness does not exist. You are an eternal, indestructible, creative force, temporarily playing human. Our report is finished. Data transmitted. Now it is your turn. Do not wait for death to start living. Wake up now. Look at the world through the eyes of an immortal being who came here not to survive, but to learn to love. The game continues, and the next level promises to be even more interesting. End of communication. System entering standby mode.